All right, a sequel to Aliens. I'll give you my thoughts at the end of the video on why I've always had issues from Aliens 3 on. But here we get a what if comic book that asks the question, what if Burke didn't die? And it creates a sequel to Aliens before and kind of sets up Aliens 3. So let's talk about this comic. I saw this pop up and I kind of was curious and I didn't read it right away. And then I did. I said, well, let me go into it because we've done a talk hard on aliens. And I will say that if you are a big fan of the franchise, you may actually enjoy some of this. Paul Reiser, who plays Burke, actually contributed to writing some of this. So here's your standard title. And here's your setup, which basically gives you kind of the where everything has been. And then it says, in a world as we know it, Burke and most of the others on Hadley's Hope died horribly that day. But what if Carter Burke had lived? So Paul Reiser gives even credit for some of the concept stuff. And then, of course, it's getting done here. So when you get to the story, you basically just get the action and the events of Aliens itself. Ripley, Hicks, Gorman, Hudson. This is Hudson confronting because I say we grease this rat effer, son SOB right now, right? So then you cut to, and you got, doesn't make any effing sense. And then you fast forward a little more. He's dead. Your dog meat, pal. So they just kind of keep going through the story. Here you get a close up of Burke. And this is all of the events of Aliens progresses pretty much as we saw them on screen, well into the sequence where Burke kind of locks them out. He's confronted by the alien, but in here he's in the goo. But then as they set off the explosion, this is Vasquez setting off the explosion with Gorman. That explosion creates a situation that loosens the goo and Burke can't escape. So that's the what if scenario. And you can see him in the background here. Ripley, that means the drop shift is still here. I could sneak on aboard and get off this rock. Come on, come on. Go up, go up. So he's sneaking aboard the ship right here as here's Bishop checking Hicks in, and basically they don't know it, but Burke gets on board. And that's kind of how the ship takes off, the events of Aliens. All right, so they escape, and then you have this situation with Burke on board. Then you have, of course, the big fight scene at the end with Ripley in the mech suit taking on the alien queen. But Burke's there. He sneaks aboard the Sulaco, and then they kind of end up in the situation where he sees them in their pods. He goes, wish I could have explained everything, Ripley. When you wake up, you'll see I'm not just some company man. And then he phones into Yutani. Now, Weyland-Yutani is the company, and they basically have this back and forth. And this is where the story starts to get a little muddled for me. I was never a massive fan of the malicious Burke. I didn't think Paul Reiser really pulls that off as well as I would hope. And here they kind of deepen that even more with him being just this weak, spineless middle management guy. And the company is basically just telling him, you have to do this. He's like, I'm not doing that. And basically kind of blackmail him into his kid and what's going to go on and whether they're going to kill him or not, all these different things like that. And he basically creates a fire, creates the abort situation with the ship that we see in the beginning of Aliens 3. So this is the ship being sent down, going down to Fury's 161, which is the events of Aliens 3. And then you basically have what happens after that. Burke wakes up. It's been 35 years. So imagine the events of Alien into Aliens 3. And then you have this story with what happened to Burke. He didn't die 35 years later. And basically, he's been scapegoat. He survives 35 years later. Look at this crazy little scooter bike thing they put him on. And he's just bemoaning his life in this sad little state. The mining operations and assets manager. And he's just this cheesy, sad little man. He's playing with like one of those needle things on his desk. Here's a photo with his kid. And she doesn't want anything to do with him. This is her. She's like this buff, total tough girl, and like no interaction from her whatsoever. And he's just a complete loser. And then out of the blue, you have this sort of like phone call, and it kind of sets the next section of events in motion. I'll give you my thoughts in a minute. And basically, long story short, Fast forward and you have this giant black dude who looks more like Bishop from the X-Men than he does a synthetic, but he's there and he delivers a pod. And of course, you know what's going to be in the pod. It's going to be, you know, a cocoon. Okay. And actually it's a mini series of some sort. So here's issue number 2, and that's kind of where we leave off. So hate the fact that Alien 3 ignored the fact that there were very interesting and very well written comic books and other material after Aliens that they ignore. What happened to Hicks? What happened to Newt? They don't die on some pod somewhere. There's actually adventures. There's character development. It is really, really interesting, and it creates an evolution and a development of what the other synthetics would be like and stuff like that. Really thought all that was great. I think it's tragic that it sort of got, ended up in the dustbin of film history. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to pick and choose pieces of that to lean more into the 20th Century Fox timeline and not what actually had happened. That said, it still doesn't fix things for me because I don't like Carter Burke, and seeing him as middle manager, 35 years later, scapegoat, estranged bad dad, and just to want the alien stuff all over again, like it's almost like self-fulfilling prophecy of like, you're this horrible person everyone thinks you are. Maybe you were maligned because the company used you as a scapegoat, so your first instinct is to get an alien cocoon. Not some to say they won't redeem it. That was my impression. There's just I don't know that the art is bad. The art just has a lot of, it's more of the story because there's a whole lot of sequences you just don't need. You feel like they could have condensed some things down a little bit, but not the worst comic in the world. But that's my take on it. Again, what if Aliens? What if Carter Burke had survived? That's my take on it. Would you guys even be interested in a comic like that? Do you need more of that? Because there's so much Aliens content in the comic books and stuff like that anyway. But just wanted your thoughts on it. I thought I'd throw it out there. I don't think anybody else has talked about it. I saw it. And thanks for watching, everybody. I am Pops.
Yeah. Right? And I'm not playing.